So, welcome to the Best Fleets podcast. This is the second episode of our 2025 season, and I am pleased to be joined today by Dale Decker, who is the CEO of Decker Truck Line, and by Bob Elkins, who is the COO of Decker Truck Line. And Decker Truck Line has won the overall award for large fleet this year. And what we're going to be doing is talking about the secrets to their success and how they got here. And so welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Um, I just like to mention that, well, actually, I'm going to let Dale answer this. So tell me a little bit about, what Decker Truck Line, how many drivers, where you operate out of, how many states you operate in, and also a little bit about the history of your company, because we were just speaking before we started recording, and there's a longer history than I realized.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Again, glad to be on with you on this podcast. Again, really appreciate the kind of recognition we've gotten, especially this year with being the overall winners of Best Fleets. Um, Decker Truckline operates about 700 drivers, about 750 trucks. We operate mainly as a refrigerated provider, service provider, and also flatbed and open deck. Also some specialized opportunities we get into, mainly across the United States, mostly through the Midwest. Heavy presence of our flatbed divisions in the Midwest and Southeast regions, but refrigerated goes out west, mostly across the country. So we're a pretty well coast to coast company, but predominantly focused in the Midwest. Our age wise is we were incorporated in 1931, but our history actually goes back into the late 20s when my great uncle and my great grandfather kind of started the company, just doing odd jobs around Fort Dodge, based out of their house on the south side of Fort Dodge. Kind of grew over time, and obviously we have a lot of gypsum mills and gypsum plants and stuff in the Fort Dodge region. It's very well known for that. So we got into helping out with some of that. Also been hauling for coal manufacturing since probably 1935. So we've had a long history with them, and still to this day we haul for them a bit.
So you're named after your great grandfather or great uncle?
My grandfather. So the
Oh, okay.
lineage of the company is my great uncle is one that really started with the help of my great grandfather, and that was Lauren Decker. He ran the company for years. Then my grandfather kind of got into the company after he came back from the war, and worked for his older brother for years. Um, After that, he then kind of joined and bought into the company in the 70s with my uncle and my father in their early 70s. And then in the early 90s, my dad became sole owner of the company when my grandfather retired, and my uncle went on other ventures. And myself has now been part of the ownership for probably the last 10 years. And my dad retired a couple years ago, and been kind of going into the future this way and going to take over at the lovely time of the Great Freight Recession.
Well, yeah, you got the best you
Oh,
got the best opportunity there. It can
good
only
time.
go up. But so there's a lot of talk about generational change in trucking and passing down a company and whether it's successful or not successful. So really quickly before we get into why you're best fleet, like why do you think you've been successful as a fourth generation leadership in the company? Because that's pretty incredible.
I think the company had a great foundation for many years, and we've been in business for almost 100 years. So we had a great foundation, but the challenge is taking it to the different steps as things evolve, the industry evolves, being able to balance holding on to the legacy part as well as being able to transition to what the needs of the current industry are, and also kind of being able to look towards the future. What kind of a company do we need to be? How does our operation need to run? How does our management strategies and business strategies need to adapt to what the future is? So it's balancing out what got us here and what made us to what we need to transition to and embrace to how we need to look forward. It's a definitely a challenge, and it can be generational challenge too, of one generation knowing how they did it, one generation seeing what they think needs to work, and kind of being able to blend those two together to have harmony.
Yeah, so you have to be, well, usually the younger generation wants to change things, but the older generations have to agree. Like they have to be on board with it. So that I think is a really important part of it.
Yeah, and it's been ups and downs to it, but I think it's part of why we're been able to adapt and embrace some things like how we really have changed our driver focus and how we interact with our drivers and how we provide a company that really truly supports our drivers and it's not just a cliche to us of let's be driver first and great, we check that box by saying it. It's things that we actually put into motion and actually live that are truly experienced by our drivers.
That's awesome. I'd like to bring Bob into the conversation a little bit. Thank you, Dale, for that. And I'm going to come back to, some of the things that you said, but you're relatively new. So Dale has like this nearly 100-year history behind him of, being Decker truck line all Decker all the time. And you've been there for about a year now, correct?
Yes, just a little over a year.
And so it's been your first experience with the Best Fleets to Drive For program. So how did you, when you kind of realized that this was a thing that was happening, how did you approach it and how did it seem to you? Like what was the things that stood out?
Well, great question, Jane. And first and foremost, I was very impressed by the process because it was my first time with this distinguished opportunity in my whole career. And I've been in the business over 30 years. So it really was something eye-opening. And what really impressed me most is it's so focused on the professional driver and the fleet that they're part of. And it incorporates every department, every all the end-to-end work that has to go into this and the interview process that I had the chance to participate in with you and your team. Incredible. Because you take all the
Really
pre-work
do.
that's yeah, the pre-work that was all done, and then you did such a great job of talking to Dale, myself, others in that interview process, and it really surfaced even more through those discussions. So again, I was very impressed.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Was there anything that, that you kind of took away from that made you think about changing something about how you're working with the company?
Oh,
Does that make
absolutely. In fact, when you think about, I mentioned about focus on the professional driver, but the interaction, the update, the department involvement really makes you think, how can we enhance everything we do? Yes, we do this well, but can we do it better? And through those interactions and then all the information that's shared back and forth, we did take some lessons to make sure that we continue to evolve each and every year because, Jane, we want to be this again and again and again.
Well, that's the common thread with the fleets who win the overall are like, okay, I'm not letting this go. It's you can come and fight me for it, but like I'm clutching this. So we tend to have overall winners that do it a couple of times. And that's the right attitude to be winning again. So if anybody's watching this podcast and wonders why the same companies keep winning, this is why they're like, oh, like this. Going back to going back to Dale. Um, you, I've talked to you before about being a large company in the best fleets to drive for, because some people have the idea that it's only really for small fleets and only small fleets do well. And Decker has been in the program for 4 years, been on the list for 4 years, and kind of started 4 years ago and got on the list and has just been sort of drama free being on the list and then got an overall award. So how did you, decide to participate and what made you think that this was a good idea for a larger fleet like yourself?
Well, you're right. Back when we first got started hearing about best fleets, it was something that we didn't think really applied to us. It was for other fleets that were doing different things in different ways. But then a couple of years ago, we had a nomination by one of our drivers, and it kind of made us realize, hey, nice, we got nominated. Probably not going to participate in this from a qualification standpoint, but we'll try. So we participated, got the nomination. Then we worked on we got the packet of survey to fill that out, and that's when it really kind of opened our eyes to say, okay, this is what this program is. It's not just a participation award of everybody kind of gets a recognition at some point by it, but you actually really do have to fill out a lot of information about your company. But as we started filling it out, we realized that a lot of these questions and programs and methods and things that are asked in the survey are things that we've already been doing. So we kind of we've had a good feeling that we filled it out right, and hoped we did. Submitted it. Next step, we found out we have an interview, so we got to do the interview with somebody that we've known for a long time, and Chris Henry, and it was pretty nice to hear. One of the first things he opened the interview with was, "You guys have done one of the best jobs of filling out these surveys that we've seen." So, well, I guess we've done a good job that part. I don't have a ton of questions for you that need to be clarified. We can just talk about some of these programs, and you can explain them a little bit more, and what the origins of them are, and some of the purposes and principles behind the programs. So we felt good about that part. And we were able to have a good conversation, and we didn't leave a lot of unanswered things or things that are vague that needed to be cleaned up with the purpose of the interview. So we get through that and submit it, and hey, I guess that's looking good. Probably not for us yet, first year, but so we get to January, and I'm actually at a meeting with our captive insurance group, and that group has a significant amount of best fleets in it that we're all in Florida at a meeting together. And that morning we're hanging out, and the email comes out of who wins, and I'm looking through it and see ACT, Halver, Grand Rapids, Grand Island, and all these other guys in the group, and well, our name's on that list too. A minute to digest that is, hold on, wait, we're actually in it. Whoa, we've won this too. So it was a pretty neat to be able to see that our first year we were able to do the things right, and it's kind of a tribute to the things that we've been putting in place for a few years before that we were able to apply to the survey and be recognized. And it was a tremendous honor to be recognized that first year, and how rare that is that a first year participant is a winner.
Hits the top 20. Yeah, it is. It's not super rare, but it's definitely uncommon. Definitely uncommon.
And Jane, if I could add to that earlier question for me, the big part, so people need to understand, is the professional drivers within a fleet fills out so many of those surveys. So it really is a big input from the very professional drivers that we want to make sure we continue to get better serving and supporting. And that was another thing that really impressed me. And it's just such a good process that you and your organization has that makes a carrier look within themselves at every department and everything they're doing. And when you do that, as Dale said, hey, we're doing some of these things, but then it also makes you think, can we do them better too? So it's just, I just wanted to add that comment because as Dale described it, it was a very rewarding notification when he got that when we won the first year there. So that's good.
Even after we get the award thing, and obviously then we come and get the main award at the presentation. But then where it really then dawned on me is afterwards when we had the opportunity to do the follow-ups with Carrier's Edge on how did you score, why did you score this way, what other companies are doing things in different ways that scored higher in certain categories. And that's when it really dawned on me that the benefit of and the value of best fleets isn't so much the recognition. The award is great, and it's humbling to get the award and the recognition for doing those things right, but it's the benefit that the survey brings to you to be able to be introspective of yourself, to be able to look at the different areas that you scored differently in, and how you may be able to score better. it really gives a template for you to improve your own company. And without that, I don't think that would I think that's what really made the difference for us moving forward every year of not just going, hey, we think we've got these good programs out there that it sounds good, we recognize for them, but how can we do things better, and in what areas do we pay attention to? And that really gives us that kind of that template to continue to work on ourselves going forward year after year, getting better. And that's what we look forward to the most, is obviously the results come out for the recognition, but when we get a chance to get our scores back, get the template, see where we have room to improve, and what things are scored better and are recognized more by drivers, that's where the benefit really comes for us, is what things can we work on now next year to score better.
One of the things I think is important is that we have so you go through the process, you get nominated, you go through the questionnaire and the interview, and then the top 20 appears. But what people don't realize, and what you're talking about, and I think they realize it, but they don't realize the importance and how key it is that you can get a report, basically. And that's where you get your scores. If you're on the top 20, it gets published in a book like this. But if you're not on the top 20, you still have scores. If you've gotten all your driver surveys in, you become a finalist, and you can find out what your scores are. And we will give you a report. And that report, for people who continue to be on the top 20 year after year, they get that report. And I think it's the report that you're talking about, is like, okay, how did we score? Where can we do better? What is the scoring? What are we scoring on? And I think this is an interesting question, is do you look at how we evaluate everything? Because it's always different.
Yeah,
Like what gets a high score and what gets a low score, that kind of thing.
yeah, we go back and we look at every item of those, and some of those we have to really put into it of what's the risk reward part of it, of what things are you going to spend a ton of money on that aren't going to produce as much of a return on, but what are those things that are, hey, we thought we were doing a good job in this, but we need to do a better job, or we need to take a different approach to it, or man, we're putting a lot of time and effort into this program and it's kind of falling on deaf ears. So let's put our efforts in other places. It's you got to kind of know the score of the game. So that's what really helps us, is being able to look at those different areas and know where to put our efforts to.
Yeah, know the score, no pun intended. There we go. My early morning, I can't speak, but my sense of humor, that's what I was trying to say, is coming back slightly. So talking about the programs, and I think it's really interesting that you mentioned changing programs. And I think this is really, really important in being successful in Best Fleets, is you look at your results and think, okay, well, what can I change? What is useful to change? What is going to give us the biggest bang for the buck, kind of thing. And you have, Bob, you have introduced some programs, and actually there's a combination of programs that you have, but there's that we really thought were interesting. There's the professional leadership connection that I wanted to start with, because that was you, right? Did I get this right? The
Yes,
professional
yes.
leadership connection?
Yes, actually, it's the Professional Driver and Leadership Forum that you're referring
Okay.
to. Yes.
Yes, that's what the provider, yes, that is what I am referring to.
Yes, and Jane, that's something that, again, an example of an enhancement. Here at Decker in the past, we've had what you would call an advisory council, so a driver advisory council. And really, as we continue to look at making sure everyone understands we're one team, one goal, and driven to be the best, we want to make sure we have a partnership in this, not just a third-party voice. So the Professional Driver and Leadership Forum addresses that enhancement that we wanted to get after. And it's 4 drivers that are nominated through the process throughout our professional fleet, and then also cross-functional leaders across the organization. And they actually come together and they surface improvement areas. They create and discuss possible solutions, and then they communicate that out to every team member and every driver, professional driver in the fleet, to make sure that they see that, you know what, one, their inputs are being heard, and two, there's a partnership approach to the enhancements in the organization. So we just didn't want to have that complaint center. We wanted to have something that could actually work together to provide solutions against those areas that we want to improve in. And each one of these members are on a 2-quarter tenure. So they'll come together on the first quarter, and then at the end of their term, if you will, there's brand new nominations on both sides of the partnership. And anything that's not completely brought to an end, as far as an improvement area, the new group then takes that up, as well as identifying new ones too. So nothing's ever left undone or uncommunicated. So
it's a little bit like kind of a driver, like office driver partnership, to like a project team almost, that takes initiatives and figure, okay, this is how it's how do we make things better, correct? That they
yes.
go through that process. And then then it's how to implement whatever those improvements are.
Yes, in fact, there's pre-work. So once they're nominated and they're updated that, hey, you've been nominated and you're part of this forum now, everyone that's in that group, that forum, has to provide their ideas, and it's compiled. So a lot of the work's done up front, and then they come together as a team in person in Fort Dodge, and then they start working on that, minimizing it down. Here's the priority list, and they go after that first priority list. All those other ones are not lost. They're kept as it continues to evolve, where something can be brought up later on, something's closed earlier, and so on. So it was really great to see the group work through 2 quarters. It was really beneficial for everyone.
I think that's a really interesting difference, because normally like the traditional driver advisory board or advisory council is like a year or 2-year term, but you've got it down to 2 quarters. So it's really, is that to make it more focused and more productive? Is that why you decided to do it that way?
Yes, yes, Jane, that's the most important reason why, but also we want to make sure that we get more participants across the fleet as well. That's why I said earlier, if something is not completed, that next group will take up that task and they'll complete it out as well. So again, it's very productive, not this elongated thing that then you hear feedback, nothing ever changes or nothing is ever communicated. This is very focused to make sure all those elements are being met.
So that's a really cool way of kind of taking the, driver advisory board to the next level. I think that's kind of what you've done, because you've, not only are leadership and the driver teams working together, you are also talking about the successes, correct? Like you're kind of achieving something, telling everybody that you've achieved it. If you don't achieve it, it goes to the next group, which is also communication. That's really cool communication, because you don't often hear about that, where you have, 2 different groups talking about a common goal. And I like that. I like that because it kind of gives you that 360 view of it. I wanted to go back a little bit about and I think the professional leadership connection was the ability to contact leadership. That was what that program is, Dale, can you describe how that works, where um, a driver can get, I don't want to say access to anyone, but how it's facilitated, because I think how it's facilitated is really important. Often you get in trucking companies, oh, anyone can talk to anyone. We have no doors, and we have open doors, and it's all great. But drivers, like, people still are afraid to talk to management. People are afraid to talk to me. I'm sure they're afraid to talk to you.
Bob came up with a good program of being able to kind of have reach outs and connections with drivers to the kind of executive staff. But we've actually kind of embraced a little bit different kind of concept on that. Is Yeah, everyone says, here, hand out my phone number. You can call me anytime, stuff like that. I think that, again, that's I think a kind of a cliche thing. Where we've put more of our focus and effort is I don't want to have to get those calls. We do more of empowering our driver leaders, our directors, and through the hierarchy, that there's the ability for them to get involved more so that they are involved more. And we want to make sure that those things are addressed more upstream by either the driver leaders, the operational directors, so that things don't bubble up to the point of, hey, I need to call Mr. Decker or Mr. Elkins. And that we've had a good success with being able to get engagement and involvement throughout the hierarchy of the organization, so that things don't just turn into I'm just going to call Dale and complain kind of thing about problems. I want other people in our organizational management taking responsibility and accountability for those things way before they become a problem. They need to be dealing with things upstream so that they don't become a problem.
Yeah, I think, and I kind of agree with the whole cliche part of yeah, I give all my drivers my cell phone number because, when you have a larger company, that's a lot of people to have your cell phone number. And if they're unhappy, you
Yeah,
may
no,
have some days.
I've been around here long enough that I was pretty little when some of these guys were around. You know me well enough that they've got my number. They still call me once in a while. That these are guys that I was tormenting my little go-kart driving around the yard when I was 6. So
And they
Yeah,
remind you of,
Jane, that was one of the first stories I heard, Jane, when I came on board from some of our most senior drivers when I was meeting all the drivers as much as I could. And they talked about how they used to talk on the CBs out there in Fort Dodge in the gravel parking lot to one another saying, hey, see that little guy on the go-kart? Don't hit him. You'll get fired if you do.
yeah,
you should avoid.
we got quite a few of the veterans that have been around many years, that
We do.
you and I was very little.
So, well, um, and I can imagine that it's not weird, Dale, to talk to people who knew you, who work for you now, but knew you when you were, 7.
Well, it's interesting, and I even kind of, for as much of the changes that I've seen in the industry, I go back to through their eyes of what they've seen as an industry change. Of we've got guys that have been driving for us since the 80s, and for what the industry was like back then, all the way to now what the industry is like now, the changes that they've gone through, and it's pretty amazing that they've stuck through it this long, that they've committed to it, that we've had such a good relationship with them through the ups and downs that we've had, through the ups and downs of the industry and the markets, and that we've kind of been in partnership together that long, and they've understood us and we've understood them, and so it's pretty unique to have
Yeah.
ask people to
I
call
think,
you. I remember when you were little this and little that, and so.
well, let me go back to what you were talking about, the driver leaders, and I'm going to sort of throw a bunch of things out at you that you can kind of choose to, how you want to talk about it. So you have what's called the sorry, ambassador resource team or art program, and then you also have driver leaders. And there's the way that you've structured the people who support drivers through the art program and through the driver leaders is really, it's quite unique. It's actually really cool. So who wants to start talking about the art program
I can
or
start
the
with
driver,
that.
like
That's
choose.
something
You
that
can,
kind of even goes back to, like I mentioned earlier, is when we first got nominated, that, hey, great, what do we do? We fill out this forms, these surveys, things, and that was one of those things that, you know what, we've been doing some of this stuff. Art program was something that came out a couple of years before we even participated in Best Fleets for the first time. It was a way for us to help a driver get more acclimated to our company, because obviously with everybody you have that first 90-day turnover period, that, hey, is there something we can do about that? If we can get them past the 90 days, the chance of them sticking increases. What can we do to make that first 90 days better for the driver? So we came up with this program to kind of not just have it was fleet manager at the time, that's their only kind of main point of contact with the company, is just their fleet manager, and sometimes the shop, and sometimes the safety or whatever they need to be. but to actually kind of have more connection to the driver, have more people from the office, from management, have a personal connection to the driver as something that they can do to, hey, what can I help you with? Another ear for them to talk to. Of, are they having problems with their settlements? Is it the PM process? Is it certain things that had milestones along the way over that 3 month period of time that was kind of suggestions for the ambassadors to ask these questions, to check in on how different things were going for them. But it also gave us a chance to have the office and management personnel make connections with the drivers. It's not just a number out there that's in a truck number or somebody in a truck number, but it's actually a person to speak to relate to know that, hey, it's not just the driver or the fleet manager that's supposed to interact with you. We all care about your success. We all care about how you're acclimating to the company and your long-term support and making those connections. The more connections you can make, the better. So it's been something that really worked for us and really helped us decrease our turnover in those first 90 days for a while. And again, it was something that we didn't realize was a formal program that we kind of did, but then with the survey, it's okay, we already have something that fits into this kind of line of questioning. So then it made us realize that we did have more of these things that kind of did fit. So our program's been a fantastic success for us for years, and we've continued to do it. We've continued to enhance it. And it's been a great tool for us.
When you like, how do the ambassadors, like, how does it work? How does it, where do the ambassadors come from?
All throughout the company. Everybody that's non-driving, other than shop techs, but everybody from, well, not driver leaders because they already have drivers, but everybody that's a non-driver leader throughout safety, HR, billing, settlements, our training departments, IT and business systems. Everybody throughout the company has a few drivers that they're assigned to be their kind of their ambassador and resource. And it's if they're talking to them and they have a concern, that person then helps shepherd them looking into the issue. And we don't just do oh, you have a payroll question, I'm going to blind transfer you to payroll answer. No, that person then helps. Let me look into this for you and follow up with you. That person then goes and gets involved in what the problem is. It helps bring in other perspectives to issues. Is, hey, payroll is just doing it this way, and it maybe isn't working for the drivers. Instead of just saying that's just the way it is, other people in the company get a chance to look at that process a little bit and understand it, so they can help find the resolution for that driver. So it helps get other eyes on processes that may just kind of go unnoticed or just accepted throughout the company. Then that ambassador then gets back with that driver. Hey, this is what I found out, and helps them work through the solution or the understanding. So it shows that there's teamwork, there's collaboration. They care to provide that driver with a better experience.
Yeah, Jane, if I could add to that, Jane, Dale mentioned the connections in his earlier comments, and then he just described in great detail the ART program. But it's so important to us to make sure we have the connection throughout the path that the new drivers are navigating and the existing drivers. It's important for us to make the connection that binds early in the process and then reinforce it throughout. So you think about when a driver prospect puts an application in, that recruiter is the first one touching base with them, and they're talking with them, and everything goes well, and next thing they're in orientation. And during orientation, it's reinforced again because we are there in their orientation class presenting to them from leadership, from safety, from HR, from customer service. So again, a lot of individuals coming to them at that time. And then at the time when they get ready to finish their orientation, they're introduced to their driver leader. Before they ever leave orientation, they have a one-on-one conversation with that driver leader again. So another connection is made. And then the ART program that Dale just mentioned, after those drivers come out of orientation, that assignment or that volunteer, hey, I want to have a driver, then they're given a driver. So then at that time, then they set up a call. And then on the back end of that, the recruiter warranty process kicks in, where the recruiter that actually brought them into the organization touches base again and says, how are things? How's your first 30 days? So I say all that to say, Jane, that it's so important here at Decker to make sure we're making connections at all times.
Oh, I was going to actually ask you about that because, you know, the art program is really good when people are coming in, and I was going to ask you if it was a volunteer program, and you mentioned that it was. But that do those ambassadors, because they're connecting with drivers, and you mentioned something about, you know, long term, do they keep those connections to drivers like over, you know, say like a driver is there for 5 years? Is that connection still strong? Like, do they still, you know, check in? What happens?
It varies a bit. I mean, I think it is something that the program is formal through the 90 days, where we document every call, make sure that people are making their calls. There's a spot in our system for the notes that are to be followed up on. Again, we have kind of made suggested bullet points at different milestones of their calls throughout the weeks and the months, that again tie to kind of what activities would be done at that point by that driver. When's their first kind of PM kind of typically due? Earlier in the process is when their first payroll settlements run's going to happen. How was that? How was turning in your miles? How was getting your dispatch at the beginning? And the topic's going to change as they progress. Yeah, there's connections that are made that are lasting. There's some that the driver maybe doesn't make it and they're gone. But yeah, it's a good. We're not going to force a connection to be ongoing long term, but it sure sets up that possibility. And we are glad that there are a lot of connections that are made long term when they
Does
Yes,
that,
we preach that. Sorry about that. Sorry. We preach that everyone impacts retention, everyone. And to Dale's point, through awards ceremony or even the front end of an awards program, it's so good to hear these leaders within the organization and these team members say, "Oh, Jane, she was my art driver." So they still recall that interaction way down the path. So it is really cool to hear that.
And kind of
and
on the kind of the retention topic, like Bob said, that everybody owns retention, and it's something we've actually done in the last year, is we've gotten rid of our retention committee of a retention team that would, and a lot of companies have these, but we kind of took the approach that retention is something that needs to be owned by everybody. And we need to deal with it upstream, not this driver's having a problem. He was getting bad miles. Well, no surprise, the driver's threatening to quit. Well, then
Yeah.
then their dispatcher or fleet manager or driver leader transfers them over to the retention group as kind of a safety net. That problem should have been addressed much earlier upstream than letting it fall through to a safety net retention team. So that's why we've kind of flipped that around and put much more responsibility and onus on the driver leaders, on the directors to be addressing those things upstream. And we're actually pleased that we've had a better result from that approach than just letting there exist a safety net for upset drivers to just fall into. And yeah, we had a good ability to help remedy the situations that way, but it's much more effective when it's dealt with upstream, and the accountability is
yeah.
with the people that deal with them every day, one, to prevent the issues, two, to have that personal connection relationship to deal with the drivers on their own before it becomes a pass it off to a retention committee.
Or it becomes a phone call to you.
Yeah.
Because a driver has found that they can't get any resolution, so they're calling you. So
I think
that's when, like,
our culture has changed significantly in the ability for the collaboration between the driver leader and the drivers to work together on things, and that we just don't seem to have the problems boil up like before. That we've made an improvement there, I feel.
so well, let's go back to the driver leaders, because we haven't really talked about like what their role is. And I think it's very interesting that driver leaders are not dispatchers. So Bob, can you tell me a little bit about what driver leaders are really responsible for?
Of course. Yes, Jane, you mentioned dispatcher and the differences. Truly, within our organization now, the customer service representative is the dispatcher. So they're the ones to match the load volume to the fleet. The driver leader is their core competency and their focus and accountability is just taking care and supporting and developing their drivers. And it's roughly a 35 to 40 a professional driver to driver leader ratio. And it's everything. It's taking care of their needs. Dale mentioned to be proactive and get to know their drivers. And that's goes above and beyond. Part of their introduction is talking about their family setting, to understand that better, to make sure that you can service their needs, to make sure that their time at home schedule is understood, to make sure that we do get them time at home when it's scheduled and when it's needed. They just get to know them. They're just not a number. In fact, that's what we say. Don't talk about a truck number. Do not talk about a driver's payroll number. It's Jane. It's Dale. And to make sure that the driver leaders have the aptitude in the assessment process to know that every call and every interaction is an opportunity, not a hassle. And that has really played out nicely. We talked earlier about the retention part of it to be upstream. And then we also talked about making sure that they didn't feel they had to call around people to get someone. The cool thing is, when you look at Dale and I had a great opportunity last week and the week before where these driver leaders are connecting with us saying, Jane just saved a load last week, and this was the specific items of that load save. And then we brought them into the office to meet with us and make sure that recognition was heard by all throughout the organization. The driver leader is the one that initiated that. So again, it's development and recognition and support all in one. And that's what the driver leader is there to do, to make sure that that is completed each and every day.
Yeah, I like that sort of three-legged stool, the support and the development and recognition. I think that's key to figuring out how to have really good driver programs. What I like about how you have things set up is how you keep problems being solved at the source. So you have the driver leaders who are responsible for the well-being of the driver. You have the art program so that people are contacting drivers and having ongoing conversations about how it's going, what do you need, and then so you don't have to have a retention team. And I like that sort of approach where and I also wanted to dig in a little bit about how you talked about retention committees and basically problems getting chucked around and not dealt with. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Dale?
Well, I think just the fact of having that kind of retention group there, that the driver leader or fleet manager just, hey, once the problem arises, let's just transfer them to them and let that slip back to that group. Versus, no, you deal with things upstream. Like that's the responsibility, is to, one, try to prevent them from happening, and two, they're the ones in the best position to deal with it. Have that relationship, that collaboration between the driver and the driver leader. Like I said, that prevents having to make a phone call to me and Bob. And no, we want to encourage solutions and collaboration at those sources, not calling up to have things boil over.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love that approach. I think the more proactive that you can be, the better you succeed in the best fleets. What I kind of wanted to end with is kind of a little bit about, the best fleets is not about us prescribing something for you to do. It's really about your own company, looking at your own company. It's really sort of this, an introspective thing. So is there anything, anything that you get out of it that you've been surprised by, or that you just kind of wanted to mention about what the program how it's made a difference to just end up with?
Like I said, it's a great recognition. It's a great honor to be mentioned in it. But the value really comes from the template that it gives you to work off of, and seeing what you're doing right, what you're perceived to be doing right, what areas you have for improvement, and also the kind of the camaraderie of the others that are in the groups. And I've got some good friends that are in the group that quite a few of the things that we've done have come from things that my other friends are doing. Like,
Oh, the other best fleets, you mean?
other best fleets. So we didn't have a dog pet policy. I know that's something that Brian Fraley at Halverline said, you guys don't have that? And I said, I'm gonna take your advice on this when you've won this many times. You guys are pretty good. So that opened our eyes to some other things that we need to do. So yeah, we went and embraced that. It was something that was outside of our norm for years. But again, changing industry and times and taking advice from others that have done a good job on these things, and being able to again have that template and roadmap to what we can do better really helps.
Last word to you. Sorry, last word to you, Bob. I'm gonna get
No, no worries. I just wanted to make sure who had the last word. But just to add on to Dale's comments, Jane, truly complacency creeps in this industry too often. And this process, if you really want to participate and you want to benefit from the participation of this great program, it will eliminate complacency because it makes you look at everything you're doing and then make sure that you're doing something different if you need improvement. And then also, as Dale mentioned, a great way to share best practices too, to make sure that everyone gets better in this industry.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to end it off. Thank you both, Bob and Dale. And, happily you won't have to do this again. You're good
Oh,
for
no,
Best
we
Fleets
will.
podcast for this year. You will? Oh, no. But in
When we win
September,
next year, we will.
Yep.
I promise.
We only got five more years to go to get to Hall of Fame.
Well, that's right. That's right. But don't forget that if you win too much, that at 7 years you'll get put into the Hall of Fame. So yeah. So there you go. There's your future for the
That's our goal. That's our goal.
Yep. Sounds like a good one. So thank you both. I look forward to talking to you again in, I guess, mid-October, November, when we do the best fleets all over again for 2026. So thank you very much.